Tá fáilte rud go dtí Winter Warmer Festival 2021. Our first session of readings this evening includes one poet Gaeilge, a poet from Manchester, and who's here in person, and a Hungarian poet from Budapest who will be reading virtually. But first we're going to have some singing and some harpsichord music, I think, from Nóirín Ní Riain. Tá aitheantas idirnáisiúnta Nóirín Ní Riain mar amháin ach tá cáil uirthi mar scríbhneoir, minister idir chreidimh, agus léachtóir chomh. Nóirín is an acclaimed singer and writer, currently living in Limerick, who has performed with people as diverse as Seamus Heaney, Sineád and the Dalai Lama. So Nóirín, please.
éisteachta mór filiachta. Cuireann fáilte agus cuireann fáilte mar chara Rita Anna agus Antony atá ling an sa. Cuireann fáilte roimh freisin tar fud an dain. Agus nach úntach, nach miróid gwilmid le coward ó Paul an sa, gwilmid in anbheith le chéile. Ag aisteacht agus féachant isteach an íocht, rud dríochtúil fad. Agus is caiilem ó bháin, gur thug cahar ó seaachtaigh, thug sé léirmheas domsa ó bháin, gur gfuil gael idir an focail file agus féachant agus feicáil. So sin obair na filií tá bailithe le chéile ag an winter warming, an gaire críúil mar a deirm i ngailing. Agus sin an obair atá le déanmhacha go bhfuil siad ná raiarc nó áharc fé le a thabhairt doing an saoil agus barsan freisin. Agus sin príomh aim an céiliúrasa an gaire críúil. Con na filií a chur os góir, con bheith ag aisteacht leo. Agus tuaim bhéchas a Paul agus don coiste. Mar tá riméid a gom, agus clúisiní crí, con bheith mar bhein éigris an drám sa. Mystics of poetry all over the world. Poets, of course, first and foremost. It gives me huge privilege and honor, nearly bringing me to tears, to be midwife to this, what's going to be here this evening. And of course, our job as listeners is to stay awake. Seamus Heaney has that great line, had I not been awake, I would have missed it. Had I not been awake, I would have missed it. So that's our job, to be on edge for the message that our poets have for us. I'm torn as to so many things that are going on in my head to sing for you, to say to you. But I'll start with just a combination of two songs that mean the world to me. Ceann bháin ón scriptúr, agus an ceann eile ón chomh carcaí a foilas ó Bess Cronin.
Blessed are those who suffer in the cause
wonderfully magical place called after a woman called Nano Nagel. And all my life, Nano Nagel has been part of my life, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Nano's full name was Hanora, and that is my name too. Hers was abbreviated to Nano, mine was to Nóirín. Secondly, I had an aunt in a presentation sister, and so she was always talking about Nano Nagel. And the historic fact that the presentation sisters, whose home we're in now, was founded, the first order to be founded after Bridget, Saint Bridget, founded her monastery in Kildare. And so, of course, I want to do a little almost the read an ish, a little ode to Bridget, because of course Bridget is the goddess of poetry, goddess of smithscraft, of healing, but of poetry. And so I want to do a little ode, first of all. And this is St. Bridget's prayer from the Irish tradition. The translation I like most of this is the one done by Brendan Kennelly. A four boss, let Annie even in it, dia troker anam Delish, a great poet himself indeed too. So here's St. Bridget's prayer from the Irish tradition. I'd like to give a lake of beer to God. I'd love the heavenly hosts to be tippling there for all eternity. I'd love the men of heaven to live with me, to dance and sing. If they wanted, I'd put at their disposal vats of suffering. White cups of love I'd offer to every man. Sweet pictures of mercy I'd give with a heart and a half. Now I'd make heaven a cheerful spot. I'd make heaven a cheerful spot, because the happy heart is true. The happy heart is true. I'd make the men contented for their own sake. And I'd like Jesus to love me too. I'd gather the people of heaven from all the parishes around. I'd give a special welcome to the women, the three Marys of great renown. I'd sit with the men, the women of God, there by the lake of beer. We'd be drinking good health forever. And did you know, every drop would be a prayer. And as a final celebration of the marvellous evening that we're going to have with our Trinity of poets, what more appropriate than calling William Butler Yeats? And 110 years after the birth of Nano Nagel, he penned this very beautiful, symbolic poem based on Greek legend, of course, too. And he entitled it, first of all, A Mad Song. Then 2 years later, he changed the title to the Song of Wandering Angus. And so, as my very humble homage to poetry and the poets that we're about to hear, who teach us how to, well, first of all, they're doing it themselves, but they try to teach us how to pluck the silver apples of the moon and the golden apples of the sun.
Thank you, Nóirín, that was beautiful. Now, in order for parents, I'm going to introduce our three poets with a brief bio on each. If you want to know more about the poets, you can check on the O'Vale Winter Warmer website. I think we'll spare the time now for the performance here. On Céad File is Rita Kelly, Rugga Rita Galibh, scríbhneoir sí gá teanga béal agus Gaeilge idir filiocht prose léir bhaisteoireacht istramaíocht tá cuid bhá dúisina buaite aici le ling a sail litera, her most recent and sixth collection, Le Gan of Artine, concerning her friendship with the poet Martin O'Donohue, was published in 2021 with Cushcane. So please a bula bás now for Rita.
Gomanity Gilles, agus Gabriel Rahagat Colomas and Corey Lawson, agus a Curim Javel, Banach the Scachin, Ni Wiga Culligana, Toy Lawher than Vale Shot and Winter Warmer. Agus Tommy Gomor Fui Humming, Egavela, agus no Paul Casey, Asan Guira. Agus tá mé inis ag leir to live ó imlechan na tíre sé sin ó muire I gunda fáile. Or to put it another way, I'm now speaking to you from the navel of Ireland, and the very centre of it. Unfortunately, ní féidir am bheith live I Gorky, tá mé píchánach faoi láthir. But I send all my love and blessings to you. Das na filige eile sé sin Anna in Budapest, cuireann beannacht é chuigi chomh mai, and I hope that all is well with you on the banks of the Danube in Budapest. Here we are on the banks of the Canquer, which goes into the Little Brusna, which eventually goes into the mighty Shannon. And of course to Antony and the Irwell, on the banks of the Irwell in Manchester. And many greetings to you and looking forward to hearing you. And cuireann diagaire is gian is gra da ma hean cara Nóirín. Agus bhhailm tasnú leis an dán ú the comédie in 1990. So what better place to start than to read the poem for Nóirín, and we can look upon her indeed as the goddess, as certainly as the high priestess, Ceoltóir, Aliantóir, Ban Éigse, agus Dlú Chora. It has a voice that is divine. Ki Curhanach. Dúrthar lidnané go mé mí Sineád an Sineád sílte sa spéir an cith drígite a amsú san ihe a réir. Ní stuide a rai san iarnód, dúrthar lin nach mé mí Sineád. Tuis go rádroch amsúr á leathnú féin an Atlantach is deach oring. An bháisteach ní nach ine, agus tlúdach scamalach idir sin is an tarlachan. Bheith an cuirnach ag tarlú is explódrú as ar náirc. Ach in anna dalíon an bhanc, I ddithe na sean parlamente. Geall sa geall cathair, the hiúlta is seach, is an cuirihin ag drithlú I bhionne da álinge. Rihim is glúiseach fuad, is séiseach an chabaidir is a chaisiach. Bin the gá is mór the lór. Líon hid a gá an spáisio mar a líonann sé a chuile cúne in agana agus I grí an éistóra. The clíonta huig da hean cara, I shrop agus siúla na cansa. Is dá tú pógin bídeach ar gúlan. I Janus and Nomaid, I Gyun na hihe, cuireann tú fiaus is masha a chakra. Agus dúirt an ddíreánach Crowe, tá an bhean atá cuin banúil agus antalach dúil le géile, tá si clárach, I jantas bheith meárach, is tearc an gine I, is siód I. Seawaise. Is siód hú. I siomar arbi, I go lúdar arbi. I glinawent, I vlahúlach da crí, agus I bhíal hiscanach da líana is da árán. Go mari tú, I stríoch is sivrin is spéir is aine. Ki ceanna, neart fóla, go mani tú an dáhan ála as clúsa cáic. Míle maithagad san Nóirín. So, lena mé ar ai le dán eile, agus a rís tá mé léamh I Gaeilge ach Beidir go maith gam na go bhar gam introduction to House of Hearts Div. Now, I mean, they say, Dar Eliot said that all genuine poetry communicates long before it's understood. So don't worry about not having the translation or not having the subtitles. That's one part of it. The other part of it is, of course, that we presume as poets, and listening to Nóirín, we can, I think, take it as, next to gospel, that every poem is in fact a love poem, regardless of what's happening. So, Berban. Bélig tú haar cúis na madine ní nach híine. Bhí an tailú incalathe I do heacht. Fanam ag córamh na máisteachtaí thar an inneog, siúlan an tá. Rihin telam go bhfuil duine éige na godoras. Séim, aslan bláhanna, aitheantas fearr in éadaí dubha. Se, is mise, dumsa, ditse. Sprain na fellistrum in a leidse, lasachar gorma in a wachlan nige, nach rias an washagwit an law a curtri hinne. Iris, chachtrin in yehe, quira go dido is an analog. Leis an ein úscail jawan, de eine atá ag lúberníl an rio carn, agus inéis imethe honna gán a lína. Anis, níl fáca ach led an vitas, na fellistrum sínte an mórd, agus fin mórd sínte fach. Tá da cala gan corp, agus ní féidir an ilva a cur fuin vód. Lenny me rai le cianna eile an céine Anish tá an law curhi Greek, which means the day is over. And, we know what it's like to be so in love and to be so passionate, and we can't eat and we can't sleep, and it does all these wonderful things to us. And Ishtan lá curhi Greek agus colatach. Is fadó a bhris na colatáin, mar a bhris na meantantracha orgusa I gointas na hithe a réir, imel na farige moire. Léan ar leán an na léhananta go léir fad a bhain in letse, in éon slán an a bháin ama, gan idirhealú na cuidse, ó mhór go bár na céime cuislethe. Million wage thief here, jinna dúcha a anan idir sinnas an airige. Atá ag búrach an tíbheile agus ag dridjum go díomhracha chuna trá a hille agus a hrá le rock sualke. Dridjum id féin go ré har na dúcha amach agus bhí halas na gealaí. Sínan an airige a méire go hogin. Cóiríonn si slí hufra híntach doing. Agus titsin or scáil in na wen, hobble argadúil in na mara. Agus tá an díomhar da hauste. And Nóirín indeed would know all about that the mystery is always, it's almost immeasurable. And of course, that's the whole idea of poetry as well, that we're taken on that journey of mystery and sometimes mystique. This other one is, I suppose, more narrative, dis scéaltaí, as we would say. And it's that moment which in a way belongs to another period, when we got actual letters coming in the door, long before email and WhatsApp and everything else. So Anna as recognition. An cuian a chasantar an tairseach, súl haar gúlan agat, fechans an bhfuil focail ar lár. Sa casa sin aithníam hu agus an nóméid, fech ar lár fuilave. Na cóide go léir a hepan orin, na freagraí agus a ceistena na náltar orin, agus na cuirí ar fad, nár cuirú riamh. Maidin bí, is mé fatach gach stampa, agus is scanalach gach nota. I bhedil cáil ar a fhuis. Clac, cuscé, clac eile, a honan I gcuine na nóirín Tafan, chassi, bel doris, clac, cuscéim, agus cuscéim eile I dul in éig. Lig leis an bhaidin I féin a dúirtú seachart, agus takad tí bónaí gan clúdach gan lorug Francóla. Is fiar agus is fosa béidir, teach ar an urlár mín amhránaí, urlár fad olingach, a casan machalí ar guscéimen a féin reis hugging. Machalí a dúiltín an tíim áthis an tairí crísin, rev villa fiú, no rev scéling beag bralach ón Rhein. Prohin ar nanam is ar sholtí, gula mi dawn, no in on, no in anam is a bheith agus go bhfuil duine eile áit éigen na smui, nach manan leis an drám seo, atá ag cuscéimir tar urlár cístan a linn. An drám sin a theanglachan gach céim, gach casa, gach cean fuin. Is an drám sin agus gach deis nár hapig buit an lancashí an cuireann seo a rébo. Is an míad agus an rébo hain. Agus a crííal. Is an drám sin ein cuscéin linn agus leva an éilethe. Fan, mar a anamí digóni áitias go bitteach an deas scéil urlár tréigethe. Indeed, we always have to be ready because we never know when that message, that letter, as an analogy nowadays, will come. Or as the other story was that we always had to have oil in our lamps. Wasn't that the idea? The next one is, it goes back a long way, and it's what happens in the autumn, where the air takes on a whole different quality. And again, referring to Nóirín, she know exactly about this because all of the sounds are amplified in this autumnal air. And I've called it an intimation, tishkent in Gaeilge, or indeed an understanding. Trabanach trigwilior train, tan 4 an hour. Ach ní hon an treinach a janas on in a hille. Na hemach an agla go litrian doing an dolo hintan cha an timach gan filu. I maho an eir ta an mi huevnes, an tische, an toignes, an tacht. An joir is an joriacht. Extasio na lande kins, tan granach legen yilla, la bog. Animulach gan anam, na cuma. A leot jeva hanig fi rina hool, passionary gonna rune hun an Iran road. Is an bailras and divagon duck thick briskanach, sala dagan galem has a leho shina fein and fished. Agus an ceann eile sin a reached Beiger díscéaltaí fós. This one is even more, has more narrative to it, and is set in Whynish, and you will all know where Whynish is, that wonderful place, that wonderful island just off the coast of Connemara. And you will hear echoes through it, echoes from Morchino-Kine, from Creigh-na-Killa, where you'll hear the echoes from Abu Buna, his main character there. And in fact, it was a poet that my late husband, Owen, and myself, we went west with John Birthwhistle, who we had met at Cambridge at a poetry festival. And he went to set himself up in Whynish for a whole year and immerse himself in Irish. and in the whole world view and the poetry. So, muinish mianor. Chashamich truar the crumpanghani, gal hanwire fuin erish. Tan tool in a slaw with an chirolas, agus the coach the cluksha. Tan tas titche, tachten and taffen and fackel. Shinne 3 carp stalke nad na guiche, fuin a mrishtani salis and air spreidse, noch lawe, noch ihe. Laster smutfiakle, led suile, at dredgen and faure, is ta an beal ita. Chen nation nomads yvai marin, shan thin an canav okkel. Hongamer na milse, ma bevilse eid, no skalin is suin, picture ifanacha, mar a will an canav cora zawak, I butach an acre. Agus an ihishach, nach ihe rowing, in ein tafen a wan tidje, in ish, agus I wad again. An chakdocha, rosmok, corna, ho hadun lan an anamacha. Scorgini salish, expliach an smooth, is an balacha chasa, I goffias na carigas grabota. Shahagini, am tinu omlathach as trumli lor hira, an ariga jere here. Janod salam na raviola, na viola skehminahe, sonan an kasurot on a tlochenius idre schlaun krapnak. By an carib, ijehe few. Fog for na pura gadacher and thraw, John Rian skolta. Biber an shahana is nirau. Tan kish in vanach bonahe is stros an wob awula. An wir kriana nien si an bitnach das na schligan agus nien na sholi as an bligan. Tan na kienta gabacha in even sa riham ro war. Lean an gohiacht an garavimel, gan in an shile brewer chapti jeer. Dorchaga an an doorling, smuggle roin urlachai mast an tursker I grono an ama. Meid baliver an lahersha, no go nachten dinna agig ar noire, le lima laurha. Ta she fool, ta. Casamid, cool kin leis an agalach. Agus fecimid an céad uair, glas click an ilain, na crasre na gligan a kelsacha, I glúciacht har a whaile mach. Abu buna. Brahan an cos biosc na mina gan a bhí ámet. Slán ege, lin, agus cuirimid bert an borher lomadín ahúr, cébocht or spray. A tjén an airige is an fokkel suin in orach a héle I gnáflin an tamgeléir. So, different tone. We're back again to, I suppose, always trying to say, we're always trying to find an expression for the sensation, for the feeling, for maybe it can be a kind of translation, that we're translating what is there, what is happening. And this is where the sun breaks through the haze of morning, brishin and green through Russell Namanya. Madden wana warta, ta borra fu kulidi, ach balin an law kuitlesh, tassa. Tam gan splanke the year, agus tam gan splanke the quidjata. Rihen meo, jober go shobre, ho marle, mil marta, beja go few kier, no kiershore, rossor, no ribber gruiga fata, igunya no igofra, rad, bug, navio, a yevnian them, nach raibh liam faoi gríocht nó faoi dheisbhreacht, ach go raibh liam, agus tá an teach fós tan creatach. And in the same vein, where, you know, separation is never easy. And again, talking about the fact that we can be together virtually. In the time that I was writing these love poems, that was not an option at that time. And then, Colin, you must also keep track of time for me. And please don't be reluctant to stop a chorum in your score. So, Ailean the Gohwem, your voice slips away from me. Ailean the Gohwem, Sheer Harnamilcha Adrin. Sheer agus fecum hu e casa lehnig cushboards. Go shev glacan to reliach the nomade ni more. See man cha, freshen cushboards. I miocht agus I gríloch di war. I cuiv na vochel a cuirto hagam snafakel a casam hagas aresh. And tidin asku shin, garabanan gach fakel wet, gach ledge, gach saul, agus acrahu an akil vonu sink, rocha agat. I rai shulach ne hir nona, agus which lativach don law, an thraj comonta, I got giantach na nini a chuig haar broad, gonna ná gásan a féin á junglacan, gonna leargus féin cho héim lo. Thrálí sheer, thrá gúna leis lehannig, tám fós fi intas is omlánu. Now, when Gerard Quirlesh, to end things, what I'd like to do is make that tie and echo with Nóirín. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but it's a poem that I wrote about St. Bridget's Day, and I tried to write it in a particular old or classic Irish verse form known as the Jevy, and you will hear it sounding different or differently from what I have just read. So I'm just going to read that more ockelscoid, agus mo chuid buochas agus mo chuid bheanach a chorinúil díobh go léir. Deir seacha fiabhra fial, tag an bríd is lana gut. Trí cuingada an éir, lingen an tain I dust thin. Speaking in níos son irim uair, léiru íon a gin glé. Réabtar as an tromlí, just speed on a new sphere. Is gan nuacht an anam crot, snachta in a cuivni kin, ac esiunt an val buin in last one a lampe lim. Ning even a gok an seo, gabog than réab a flé, gan noir a givre ni fós, ni targa, gan noch de cléf. Gur míle maigid.
Rita, thanks very much. That was wonderful. Now, our next poet is from Manchester in the UK, Anthony Rowland. He is one of two ARC Publications poets here this evening. There are our colleagues in England and they're patrons of the festival for many years. ARC have been supporting the festival for many years. Anthony has published 3 collections, one from Salt, two from Salt and one from ARC, I think. He received an Edward Gregory Award in 2000 and was shortlisted for the Forward Prize for Best Poem and published in the Forward Book of Poetry in 2019. His most recent collection is simply called Lame, and we have it here for sale. So, Anthony, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I feel like I should say here, just in case Rita and Anna come back, and then you can flank me in the background, so I'll try to stay in the right place. Thank you, Paul, for inviting us here tonight. Thanks for the wonderful singing at the beginning. That was a great start to the session. Lovely to hear from Rita and Anna to come. And thanks to my family for coming as well, most of which are in the audience tonight. Our first trip away from home for 2.5 years. First place we came to was Crowe after that. I'm going to read mainly from my collection M, which is simply M for Manchester. It means mainly. There is a long sequence in it called which is basically based around the Manchester postcodes. A friend of mine was murdered in Manchester in 2013, so I wanted the whole sequence, which is going to be up to M50. I've only got to about M42 at the moment. They're only into 26 in this book. I wanted it to be kind of elegy for him, but also to be a celebration of the city that Kieran, his name was, that he lived in. And given that Rita mentioned the banks of the Irwell, I shall begin with a poem which is precisely set on the banks of the Irwell in Manchester, in a suburb called Ardwick. This probably contains the only Irish word in the collection, so apologies for the mispronunciation as well. This is called the Northern Quarter of Cushla. I'll just explain that in Ardwick, this is where there used to be a working men's club, which the Manchester and Salford poet John Cooper Clarke used to read at. And I went there in about 5 years ago to try and find this working men's club. Jumped in the car when I found out about it to just see a bulldozer going up and down, because Ardwick has massive redevelopment for the last 5 years. So unfortunately, I missed the club by about 2 weeks. So this poem is about kind of reimagining what was there in the 70s when John Cooper Clarke used to read that. Northern Quarter. Off traffic lights cluster their licorice, and a digger shackles its mesh as the night tiles to your first pint, where scutchers honed cotton fibre. The graduate plods his slab, torn as his suede. This synth's photo has been bulldozed overnight. The New Cross Labour Club Amcoats. Blinds hide the tired light that dusts. Vote Latham. These pensioners doze in best under the pole, proud as flats that tower the canvas. Now, Homebase turns debates to scroll, stamps flint glass, moss litter, and their politics hot as blossom. May they have polled, may they peace rest. I'll read another poem from the end sequence maybe later on in the reading, but I'll turn now to, well, this poem starts with a quotation from David Cameron. It might not sound like the best place to start, but bear with me. A few years ago in the UK, they were thinking of introducing the government, what was coalition government as it was, what would have been called the fat tax, so tax on pies and pasties and sausages and so on. David Cameron was on the national news saying he didn't actually want to go down this line of having the fat tax, because he said, I really enjoy Cornish pasty, and the last time I had a Cornish pasty was on the station. And I knew he was lying, because I used to get a train from that station all the time. The station that he was referring to, the company is the West Cornwall Pasty Company, closed down about 2 years before he said he ate a pasty there. So this is my response to that little fib. This poem is called Newark. So it starts with a quotation from David. I think the last pasty I bought was from the West Cornwall Pasty Company. She likes pasty with your fib pasty. You try to buy kudos from a mine stall. Class largesse with the beast of Bradford on Newark Northgate, seeking a Cornish. Do you flaunt your flaky walls on a pendolino, bristle mince between your incisive incisors in an onion-soaked delight, gravy gunged beyond gelatine in a comfortable sack? Laugh at the possibility of Stilton, admire the chop of corner potato, swerve at the nibble devoid of filling, pastry like a kiss without the squeeze of lava cheddar or liver spills, or admit to a pasty years too late. You are caught in the floodlights of the forecourt after the pumps are hooked, plying against her the flab of cellophane and its meat sludge. Gorge instead on custards dipped in vanilla, entreat your cousin Otter to express venison, which is, true to form, palpable beef, not handsome, says Pepys, or binge on in it together jumbo sausage. Learn from the pastifests in Calamay, Mexican paste in the state of Hidalgo, Jamaican patties that shell the turnover, Spanish empanadas quenched with fruit, and bricks Palemi, ubiquitous samosa. Or let there be simply some dainty pork pie. Take your spiganel of Spain and break it in a pot of good ale, where Eric his aching girth would span and roar above his pasty pan. Pudding Lane is burning down, burning down, burning down. The flice and fisser pasty was refined in its fishing. Quando fiam uti, the crown of turnip. Oh, swallow, swallow. I sold my comforter to Billy Blake for a whortleberry pasty. These pasties I have shored against my ruins. Why then, I'll brown you in your suet. Flagons of hock and delicate ioncatas. Pasty, pasty, pasty. Okay, the next poem was thank you. The next poem came out of a provocation. I heard another poet on the radio a while ago, Craig Rain, favourite poet and an editor, talking about subject matter that you couldn't write poems about. And he was talking about a new collection which is about skiing. And one of the lists, within the list that he gave you, the things you couldn't write about, he said you can write a poem about petrol stations. That immediately made me want to pick up my pen and write one. So this was the result of that provocation. This is a poem called Libya. Economies break on the crude prices, the complicity of Libyan oil. Meet me at the reception of the water point, the pump kid fueled with Maserati dreams, where clouds form like afterthoughts above the logs, coal, a petroleum spirit. The office, spick as a pin, attends your balance and rewards. Tubes anticipate the wireless pumps. The nozzle pipe sucks air to a vacuum before the click-click fills with the corpses, the fossils compressed with mud and sun, then heated and cracked in refineries to grades of kerosene and diesel pumped for invisible trucks that fuel the night. Okay, the next poem I'll read is about a place close Scottish to where we live in the northwest of England, a bit far away from Em, but this is about Sheffield in South Yorkshire. A few years ago, I took a job in Lincoln and commuted to Lincoln quite a lot, using the train that goes from Manchester to Sheffield, on to Lincoln, and spent hours and hours of my life waiting in vain for the Norwich train to arrive to take me back towards Liverpool. It made me think that the only poem that I'd come across which mentions Sheffield train station is one by the poet Philip Larkin, where it's in a poem called Dockery and Son. And the line just goes, I changed in Sheffield and ate an awful pie. That was Larkin's version of Sheffield train station. So this made me want to respond to that. This is called I Changed in Sheffield. I changed in Sheffield and ate an awful pie. I changed in Sheffield and ate rain. I ate Sheffield and changed a pie. I changed at Sheffield and ate stationery. You are what you change at Sheffield. The state of Sheffield is an awful pie. Eat pies and change yourself into Sheffield. Peter Piper picked a peck of Sheffield pies and died. Sheffield is changing into an awesome size. Size 14 shouldn't change at Sheffield. I charged at Sheffield with only a pie. I entered Costa Coffee with the sole intention of choosing a pie. It was trickled to treats of blue muffins, muffins like fly cemeteries, a cross between muffins and food, fair trade chocolate and several varieties of Maltesers, biscuits, biscotto, totty wafers, and a large mug of jam. But nothing pie-like, no tart offering, tartan gaping, or even a flat tort. So I left. I changed at Sheffield and Norwich opened up to me in this can of oozing passengers, too sad to be late. Changed I to Sheffield to underline personal tragedy. I changed in Sheffield when the south turned to mizzle. I changed Sheffield into a metaphor due to electrical work. I turned Doncaster into Tenerife, but only on Sundays. Beware the sliding platforms of your wet creams. Due to the jet conditions, please trail the vapour of your neighbour's cigarette. Due to the net timing of your journeys, please despair under this arrow. Change platforms to miss connections at will. Only connect your legs to the bridge during maintenance. The sky caved in when I boarded a diesel unit. Change to the slow train of Hope Valley, where Kinder Scout sucks cloud and New Mills trains the precipice. Slow the axles to flood the moor, the tractors down with unfathomable sheep spilled onto cabbages. Or just stay in Sheffield forever. Marry a platform and eat a midnight trap. I changed in Sheffield and ate an awful pie. Back to the M sequence momentarily then. We'll go back to close to the Irwell, right into the city centre. This is a poem written specifically for Kieran, who I mentioned earlier. This is a poem called M1, Prodromal. Interpolate disinfectant. The court pins families with light. The defence barrister cuts butter words. The defendant's face is easy as a salesman, suited and folded to please. All stand for the nudge. Jurors hawk the statement change, his tongue wasting into memory blank, banking on the suit of psychiatry. The brain floods with chemicals, secrete the knife after the aorta, upset your mouse. Welcome to the oast house. The jury's out, the thunder rounds its cloud, and the wake jars sound as a verdict. Okay, I'll finish with a poem from my second collection, I'm a Magenta Stick. First collection published by Arc. I'm a Magenta Stick was published by Salt. I'll just read one last poem, which is called The Unexpected Guest. Hollis put us up in a wonderful hotel in town, but when I used to book hotels myself a few years ago, I used to read the websites, book hotels through the websites, and start reading the reviews of the places where I was going to stay, and then could never end up actually booking a hotel because somebody always had something negative to say about the place that you were looking at, which would then put you off booking it. So this is kind of a found poem, and it collects a few of those comments and the reviews together. So, The Unexpected Guest. I've never seen a spiral staircase in a room before. Would not know where to begin, and they should do something about the pigeons. There was something sore in the bathroom I couldn't place. Felt unsafe in the gym. The doors were not pleasing. Suspect a joining face with wall penetration of heat. I found a dirty sock in a broken bed. I told reception and they looked at my head. The shower was a daily feat. I wear glasses. It got hot if you turned your back in the wrong direction. Told to use our newspaper as a fan to keep cold. What do you wash your face with? I asked. They said, the big towel. The doors opened onto the bed. I could not even take a photograph of it. They didn't serve us, but they made us sit. And the breakfast, when it came, looked unhealthy, sad. We found someone in our bedroom. That was weird. The relaxation room was cold. The toaster was trained by a parrot. No coasters for the bell captains. We found a beard in our suitcase. There is only one phone for use in the hotel, and it is a phone. It is also locked in a private room. We had to go into another cupboard. The toaster was alone on the serving table and frustrated all the guests. They should have mentioned that it was under construction. The gel was terrible. Ditto eggy bread. The suite at reception was coked. Motorbikes roaring up and down. The bartender was a clown. Being a smoker, I appreciated that I smoked. Breakfast, waste of a cow. Floor, too high. I want fresh milk and English tea. The kitchen was excellent, but empty. If the room was a minibar, it would be nice. Milk, creamer. I slept with a wet carpet. This may not be the hotel you are looking for if you need service, facilities, or storage. We did not want these. The hotel was perfect.
Thank you so much, Antony. I really enjoyed that. It was very, very good. Now on to our last poet tonight. Our final poet, virtually again, will be the award-winning Hungarian poet Anna Szabó. I won't try to speak Hungarian. My Irish is rusty enough, as you can see. She has published 9 volumes of poetry and also children's books and award-winning short stories. Her most recent poetry volume in English is called Trust, and it's also from ARC. So a clap please for Anna.
Hello, is it all right? Do you hear me? Thanks a lot. Thank you for this nice introduction. And I will mostly read in English, but some poems, I suppose 2 or 3 will be read in Hungarian, just for you to hear the tone of the language, how it sounds. The first one, try and guess what it is about. I will read it in English next, but now Hungarian. So, boszorkánydal. Ha zúgni hallod a lombokat, fúj szél, senki se lásson, állj a tetőre, bontsd ki hajad, fúj szél, senki se lát, szél cibálja a fák tenyerét, fúj szél, senki se lásson, szirmait mind elereszti a rét, fúj szél, senki se lát, ömlik, árad a zúg a sötét, fúj szél, senki se lásson, csontodon érzed a szél erejét, fúj szél, senki se lát, hozza, amit hoz, hadd vigye el, szállj szél, senki se lásson, szállj szél, senki se lásson, dob le magad, hisz a szél felemel, szállj, szállj, senki se lát. So the English won't be that intense because I'm unable to read in another language in this, well, with this force. So, witch chant. So it's about witches, but it's not evil witches, only the possibility to fly, you will hear. Witch chant. If you hear in the leaves, there's a roar, blast, wind, don't let them see. On the roof stand and undo your hair, blast, wind, nobody sees. If the wind grabs at hands of the leaves, blast, wind, don't let them see. And the petals of meadows drift loose, blast, wind, nobody sees. If the dark, if it swells, if a groan, blast, wind, don't let them see. You will feel the wind bang on your bones, blast, wind, nobody sees. Let it bring what it brings, let it snatch. Fly, wind, don't let them see. You will fall to a wind that will catch. Fly, fly, nobody sees. And it's a translation. I will show you the volume, trust. And it was translated by Claire Pollard. And it's a really beautiful memory for me that a few English poets joined us here in Budapest or at the Lake Balaton, and we translated Hungarian poetry. We translated British poetry, and they translated Hungarian poetry, and it was their first time to translate. It was Antony, Polly Clark, who was so kind to write a few words here together with Sasha Dugdale. Polly Clark and Alan Shears and Matthew Hollis over here, and Claire Parad was with them, and we translated each other. And since Claire has become an editor of modern poetry and translation, so it was a very good experience for her, I suppose. And I made literal translations for her, and we worked together on the texts. But I think that she's an honorable Hungarian by now because she understands. I don't know how she does it without speaking Hungarian, but she understands. So a cat poem will follow in English, so I won't read it in Hungarian. The title is Flatters Bags. And I have a little statue of the Egyptian cat goddess, and we have a black cat. So this was in my mind when I wrote it. Sorry. Cat, you silky madness, you hot pamperer, seeking higher bodies out, eco hunter, ye long extended melted spring, mirror gazer, your eyes both lamp and fog, you purring, buzzing, hot throat, you spiked mouthful that shreds, you curve-clawed belly splitter, cat, you sleeper, 9 billion lives, and now you judge at the gate, a soul in your dream, while a child's hand smooths your cool coat, and arrivals to the afterlives in red skin, you kill, one bite to throat, rough-tongued, swallowing blood, returning them to earth, to live as meat. There you are a god in the dark corridor. Here you are a plushy toy, pliable sweetie, wordless talker, crier, translator of human language, cat that gets the coward's tongue, then spits it back up in a dream, in a sleeping child's mouth. So suddenly she wakes and starts to talk. You soft wildness, concentrate of death, life, judgment, witness, reflect and know my days. Come, sit in my lap, reassure me that I live, that I don't only dream I cuddle you, that I'm a human and you're a cat, that though I want more each day and may become a rat, you'll let me pass. And a few poems about writing. O lecteur, you, reader, washing in words to soothe yourself or save time. You clean with disused water, avoiding the oceanic, soaking in the tolerably tight space. Aren't you tense? What do you hope? For refreshment? To be rinsed? Is it enough if it's comfortably warm? You stretch out, fill it completely. If the poem is a bath, you step out naked. And Splinter, which is silang in Hungarian, so it's very good that this the hurtfulness it comes through in English as well. So splinter. Write something you don't understand, like the sudden moment your nail tears. Hiss, bite, be angry, but ask. Don't give up. Write something only others understand. Sweep up the splinters, collect the dust. Believe that there's a reason. Scream, scrub. You can't get away so easily. Write it down as it leaves your hand. It burns, but it doesn't burn up. Let it burn. Write only that pierces and surprises. Write what you don't feel like writing and can't. And I will read this poem in Hungarian just for you to hear how it sounds like. Szilánk. Írj olyat, amit te magad sem értesz, mint amikor a körmöd beszakad. Sziszegj, harapj, vagy haragudj. De kérdezz, ne hagyd magad. Írj olyat, amit más ért, de te nem. Seperj szilánkot, szedd össze a port. Hidd el, hogy akad ebben értelem, sikál, sikolt. Nem akarod megúszni kevéssel. Írd le, ahogy a kezed vezeti. Befele ég, de izzik csak, nem ég el. Engedj neki. Csak olyat írd le, ami szúr és meglep. Csak azt, amihez nincs erőd, se kedved. And how much time do I have? Do I have some 5 minutes, perhaps? Sorry.
10 minutes, Emma.
10, okay. So I can read the longer one in English. It's about my grandmother. I loved her dearly, and I don't think that I will tell anything about what happens, because you will hear. Protocol is the title. She was a doctor. She would have understood. She knew all the instruments and artificial words, sterile rubber gloves, the smell of disinfection, the scales on which powders are measured with such precision, the cold white cloak in which specialists of the body pass, uniformed like angels, knew the cool, sure terms of the dead language, the frozen empathy and objectivity when it comes to cutting. Dave wrote about the texture of her lungs, the color of her liver, accurate in exact sentences, those good pathologists. Now I can see inside the body she obsessively hid from me when I was 3 and accidentally stepped into her room, and which, much later, weakly, sick, she offered me one afternoon so I could help her get into the bath. She was not carefully calculating, like love. It was more objective, like trust. She was beautiful and 80. Me, preparing for my wedding, 23, relaxed in my flexible body. She didn't care anymore about the long surgical scar, the deep ditches of her flesh, the skeleton showing under skin, the small hips that gave birth to my father after 2 days of hard labor. I didn't examine her. I wasn't staring, but I saw, and she was the same, not other. I held her almost floating in bath water. I never wanted to let go. 8 years after her death, looking for another document, I find the report in a folder. Just like the chest bone snaps before the belly slices through, just as after separating the internal organs, the scalpel touches table with a clang. An alien hand, in a rubber glove, grabs my heart and throws it on the scales. The next one is about a small event and small incident that happened to me. When I'm writing, I tend to forget things. Household things sometimes, as everyone does, I suppose, or I hope. And I somehow forgot a basket of potatoes in a shelf. So it's about the moment of finding it. Basket. I forgot about the basket of potatoes. Who knows how long it hid in the larder. I only found it during housework. I was unsuspicious and unprepared. I raised the braided lid, and from the dark, as after a cellar bombing, comes the underground howl, the invocation and the alleluia. I saw a bone-hurting sight. So many skinny begging arms, pale yellow, shocked towards me, frenzied, trembling, and below their parched, fused bodies. Light, light, save us, please. Miserere nobis, we want to live. Sanctus, sanctus, to live. I closed the lid, pushed them back down. So, another poem, well, perhaps this is, this basket poem is also about cruelty and love. If every poem is a love poem, this grandmother poem was a love poem too, in a way, and the basket poem as well. It's very hard to love as an adult. And when people argue, my husband is also a writer and we are together for 33 years. So it's quite a long time. And we were kids when we met. And we are both very passionate. And he likes to argue. And it was very hard for me to keep up with his pace of arguing and to shout back and to learn how to fight for myself and for my own rights and how to be an adult and not a kid who is just trying to hide away and try to cover her head, and being afraid is not a good thing in love. So, keeping up with it, it's very hard. So, how much easier it would be to love a teddy, a puppy, a plastic doll. Anything would be easier than these feverish, dark, furious eyes. I'd hide under the bed and hug it, lull it in the dark, dusty place, listening, motionless, warm. Its ears and nose are full of tears. I hug with my eyes closed, in silence. It is alive. I am lying there. I'm not. I will read it quickly in Hungarian, and then I suppose there is time for another poem, the last one. Könnyebb lenne. Könnyebb lenne szeretni mackót, kiskutyát, műanyag babát. Minden könnyebb, mint ez a lázas, sötét, dühtajtékozta szem. Ágy alá bújnék, ott ölelném, csitítgatnám porszagú zugban, hallgat, nem mozdul, és meleg. Csurom könny már a füle, orra, szorítom lehúnyt szemmel, csend van, ő él, én fekszem, nem vagyok. And a poem about, well, yes, it's a love poem, but it's a love poem between, well, mother and baby, but how we are just raw and open when it comes to love. Love without trust, or love when trust and love merge. You know how a little baby is so vulnerable. And so it's the poem She Leaves Me. The title was, it was translated several times into English. So in Hungarian there are no he or she. There is we have no sexes in the language, so you cannot tell. I will read it in Hungarian for you to read that. When you say leaving me, she leaves me, it can be a he or she. And Claire Pollard has translated it as forsaken, which I really like. So I will read it first into English, and I will finish with it in Hungarian. Forsaken. Traitor, you leave me. You pushed me out of your body and now leave me. You let me eat of your body, then leave me. Rock me and leave me. Stroke my feet, wipe my bum, comb my hair, leave me. I smell the smell, I am embraced. I won't leave you, you say, as you leave me. That comforting whisper, don't be scared. I am scared, I'm cold and you leave me. At evening you seem to lie down beside me, but then sneak out and leave me. Vast, cozy, vivid, my nest, which kisses and croons and leaves me. Fills up my palms with sugar. Here, eat this. Then you leave me. I cry and holler, I clutch, I can catch, I can hurt, but you leave me. You close the door and never look back. And I do not exist if you leave me. I wait like a shaking pup. You snuggle, lull, and then leave me. I must have you, or life is death. You raise me, warm me, leave me. The arm is a cage, but the lap is a house. I go back to accept you leave me. There's only one lesson. I am not you, that stranger, the other who leaves me. In the word, there's someone else waiting. You will have your own someone to leave. When you close the door, don't look back. Waiting is easy, going is hard. Some are betrayed, some betray, some will always be waiting, afraid. There is always someone who never returns, gives birth and dies and leaves you. So in Hungarian. Elhagy. Elhagy, elárul és elhagy, kilök magából és elhagy, önmagát adja ennem és elhagy, ringat és elhagy, talpam simogatja, fenekem törüli, hajamat fésüli, elhagy, orrom az illatát issza, ölel, soha nem hagylak el, elhagy, áltat, mosolyog, súgja, ne félj. Félek és fázom és elhagy, este lefekszik az ágyra velem, azután kioson és elhagy, nagy, meleg, eleven, fészekadó, csókol és dúdol és elhagy, cukorral tölti a két tenyerem, tessék, ehetem, elhagy, sírok és ordítok, úgy szorítom, foghatom, üthetem, elhagy, Csukja az ajtót, és hátra se néz. Nem vagyok senki, ha elhagy. Várom, ahogy remegő kutya vár. Jön, ölel, símogat, elhagy. Ő kell, mert nélküle élni halál, felemel, melegít, elhagy. Ketrec a karja, de ház az öle. Vágynék vissza, de elhagy. Egy csak a lecke, nem ő vagyok én. Idegen, idegen, elhagy. Ott a világ. Lesz más, aki vár. Lesz majd benne, kit elhagy. Csukd be az ajtót, vissza se néz. Várni a könnyebb, menni nehéz. Lesz, ki elárul, lesz, ki elárvul. Mindig lesz, aki vár, aki fél. Mindig lesz, aki vissza se tér. Megszül, és meghal, és elhagy. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was really brilliant. Now, following those wonderful readings, we've only time actually because the readings went on small, but we've only time for one question. I'll just put this question to the three of you. It's great to have such diverse voices here this evening. Having listened to and read some of your poetry before this, and I've a question to put to Rita and Anna. I know the both of your work appears a lot in translation. Both of your work sound fantastic in your own languages, Irish and Hungarian, as we just heard there. Are you always happy with the translations, or do you think translation is suitable for a certain type of poetry, maybe where the message is as important as the sounds, or more important than the sounds? Antony, I know still a lot of your poetry it has specialized words, sometimes local phrases and aphorisms. Do you think this work would it work as well in translation? And have you been translated much? So with that question about translations of your work, I'll go to Rita first.
On my mic. Thank you, Colin, for the question, and indeed, Elhad to Anna, because I've learned at least one word of Hungarian. How wonderful and what a great privilege it was. And it's such an interesting question, translation. And translation, I think it was our friend, let me see, Cervantes, who said that translation is like looking at a tapestry from the other side. And I think that it probably has far more meaning for Anna than for me in one sense, in an Irish context, because I write in both languages. Many of the translations I would have done myself, but not all, and I'm far less inclined to do nowadays because it's almost like double work. But we can't learn every language. There isn't world enough nor time to do it. And much as we would love to be able to read everything in its own language, it's not always possible. Therefore, we have to come with the help of great translators, and that's always happened to us. Is it easy? Of course, it's another poem, really, whether it's done by the poet herself or by a translator, like you mentioned, Catherine Pollard. That is another poem, and sometimes it reads like that it's reconstituted in the other language. Now, that's enough for me, and it will be so interesting to hear Anna speak to this.
Is it my turn to answer, or?
Sorry, we'll go to Antony there first. So.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's wiser. I have to find the text first. So.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks very much. Translation, I've been translated into a couple of languages that I know of. German and Czech. I was in a Czech anthology a few years ago, and I was wondering how on earth that they would translate some of the local phrases that you mentioned before, but they did manage it and did a good job, I think. In terms of the, maybe just say something about the rhythm of translation, because it was wonderful in both poets, but and also I think I was picking up on the kind of insistent rhythm in Hungarian when Anna was speaking. I thought that was really interesting, the way that you were then thinking of, or somebody was thinking of how to translate that into English, because the poems sounded very different in the different languages, which also made me think of a Hungarian poet that I'm sure Anna knows, János Kalinski, who I've written about before. Was translated famously by Ted Hughes. And Ted Hughes was kind of so interested in the rhythm of the original Hungarian that he then began to write his own poems in English as if they were translated poems. And that's always kind of fascinating, with the idea that you might have a kind of a different rhythm in another language that you might then try to replicate that rhythm of what it sounds like to be translated. Anyway.
That's very, very interesting. So we'll just finish with Anna so on that.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for mentioning Pilinski. Okay, so thank you very much for mentioning Pilinski, because tomorrow is his birthday. And he would be 100 years old. So Hungary is full of Pilinski fans, and tomorrow I will have two discussions about him. So it's so good to hear that you read him and you think about his texts still. And I will, instead of answering in my own words, I will read a poem by Claire Pollard, addressed to or written about me. I am a translator myself. I translate. That's how I make my living, and I really love her translations. And we worked together a lot. And I translated from several languages. I understand 3 or 4 languages, but more or less. I mean, not very well, but I translate from more poems, because you can translate from literals with the help of the author. And I will read a short poem by Claire Pollard, which is about Hungarian translators and translation as such. And she wrote this when she was a beginner. Now she's not a beginner as a translator. She's a really great translator herself. But this poem answers your question. So it's by Claire Pollard, and the title is Unfaithful Beauty. Hungarians have named those translations that are sluttish in their slippage, too tempted by a trick or tick of tongue to untruths, unfaithful beauties, whose line we should not trust, though we might still swoon at their softness, be unsettled or undone by them, more than by realer words. Anna is a translator. One late night, slightly smudged by honey tokai, full with gulyásleves or goulash, I heard of her lost wedding ring. It slid into a huge and shifting sea, of how she scanned the stony bed until the skies inked black, and still came back the next day, dive after dive, sifting the sand with her hands, infinitely patient. And how, at last, it truly was a miracle, this finding. There was the perfect vowel, that vow, that gift, all faith repaid. Anna says the story is what matters. Different each time it is told, but always astonishingly true. And now, when I pick up the pen to translate, I look at my ring, and I look at the Whyte. The beautiful words I hear whispered are not always words from the right mouth, are not always right. And so this, and I just discovered while reading this poem that the word trust might come from her poem, because she wrote about faithfulness and trust in words, and this is the ring, which is, it really fell into the sea, so this is a true story, and I found it the next day. So somehow one is tempted to be unfaithful, but always remains faithful to the original. I don't know how. It's a miracle, translation is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, for that. And that was very interesting discussion. And so we'll just finish with a clap for Rita, for Antony, for Anna, and for Nóirín, of course, for entertaining us there for the last hour and a half.